We're going live now.
Okay.
You got some background noise.
All right, let me knock it out.
Hey, how's it going? It's Man Tomorrow here. I want to thank y'all for coming through again. Tonight, we're going to talk about the electoral count of 1887 and the reason why this is important. Now, there's a lot of things that have been going on that should not be going on. This was already settled law by different portions of things that was happening within American society, but for some reason, we have to keep going over this stuff time and time again because we still got people who just don't want to adhere to the process. And we're here to explain to you the things that happened and the reason why this particular thing is so important and why it's really unneeded for lawsuits and all of these other things to be going on. So without further ado, I want to welcome Nagano 11 to the panel, and I want to welcome Mike B to the panel.
Hey, peace to the panel, man.
Hey, peace.
All right, so our first stop here is what we stop off at is in the election of 1876, where certain states sent conflicting sets of electors to actual Congress to actually vote on the actual presidential election, which actually divided it with the divided Congress and different sets of electors showing up. It would obviously be not a good thing because these are things that was never ran into before by the country. And if somebody can try to gum up the works with a process that you need to nail down, these are the type of things that happen. You know?
Yeah, that's it. That's exactly correct. They came in with a different set of electors, gummed up the works, really confused things, and it created a lot of disputes. When we look at the 1876 election, that was actually Hayes versus Tilden. That was, and they were ultimately looking to basically get rid of Reconstruction. So it was designed around Black people. So you were center in this. This is, of course, 11 years after the Civil War, and we went through a period of Reconstruction, of which was cut short. And Rutherford B. Hayes came in. This was after Johnson was leaving, and Rutherford B. Hayes and Tilden had a very contentious election, and people came in and bought in their own electors and so forth. That was already set for the Electoral College, and created a lot of hassles, if you will. And there had to be a compromise to be made, and the compromise was made. Ultimately, Hayes became president, but that did end Reconstruction, and these various electors and that were brought onto the board of electors there that weren't really ratified properly. A lot of madness went on, and then 10 years later, in 1887, we came up with the with the board of with this new act that really set things into motion to where we're actually dealing with this actually today. I don't want to get so deep into it because I just want to talk just briefly about how this came about, but we'll get into this a little bit more. I'm sure Mike and MOT will talk about it in a little bit more depth, but there was a lot that was involved with this. But I would like Mike and I would like Mike to say what he has to say first before we even get into this even deeper. But go ahead, Mike, if you want to add on this.
I think you all covered it already.
Okay.
All right. So you have to realize that there was a certain rule put in place, so that way it would be not handed over to the actual people who was going to Congress, but they would leave it up to the actual states to actually bring the stuff to Congress.
That's exactly
So,
correct.
So the next thing we're going to talk about is the kind of Bush v. Gore thing, where everything still didn't happen as it was supposed to, and people got disenfranchised by stopping the count at a certain particular point and disenfranchising a lot of people. Like when this voter fraud thing of right now first started, they wanted to make it look like that the actual vote count was one thing, and that everybody should just stop counting at midnight, and that the election was supposed to be called then. But given how everything was, counting or even calling it at midnight was absolutely the wrong thing to do throughout history. You should be able to go through and find all the people who voted and count their actual votes. And
Yeah.
so you had the Florida situation going on. Jeb Bush, the president, the would-be president's brother, presiding over that. You had the Catherine Harris situation, the Secretary of State, who was also the Bush campaign chairman, and all that stuff was an actual mess. That is an actual election where Al Gore should have been suing like Donald Trump was suing at this particular point in time. So you have to realize that these things just really didn't need to go on. And this was set this thing up right now. So there was a Supreme Court decision in July of 2020. I'm going to pull this up here. Let me share my screen. So that way I can read to you the actual background of what happened there.
MOT,
because this is
no. I want to interject a point, possibly.
okay.
Oh, okay. Oh, yeah. I just want to say what MOT's talking about is very key. With Catherine Harris, who that he just brought up, who was the Secretary of State, she is very important in the count. Your Secretary of State of these states are very critical in the counting of votes and who gets counted and who doesn't. And one of the undercover things, once again, that involved Afro-American voters mostly was the fact that we had at least 87,000 Black voters who were removed from the rolls. We now look upon that as somewhat illegally, who were voter suppressed, who were legitimate voters but were removed illegally, pretty much by the state of Florida, and that too went unchallenged in that count. So I just wanted to just bring that point in as well, because what we'll go a little bit more into some of the voter suppression techniques that are going on actually currently now in Georgia, which are very, very, very relevant to points like this that we're talking about, even though this is not a presidential election. But how even in presidential elections, voter suppression played a key role that was not brought up, especially when it came to the Electoral College count vote for a very key swing state like a Florida, or it could be in Ohio or any other state that we could talk about. So I just wanted to just be very clear on that point as well. You were suppressed.
Yeah, we was going to cover that. We were going to cover that a little bit later.
You got it.
Supreme Court clarified the rules for the Electoral College. State may restrict faithless voters. Now, this is something that was a unanimous decision that was 9-0 by the Supreme Court. I will read briefly the summary up top. July 10, 2020. On July 6, 2020, the Supreme Court unanimously held that the states may punish or replace presidential electors who refuse to cast their ballot for the candidate chosen by the voters of their state. In the case of Chiafalo versus Washington, a majority of the court held that the state of Washington's congressional authority to appoint electors include the power to impose a fine against electors who violate their pledge to the candidate chosen by the state's popular vote. In a related case, Colorado Department of State versus Baca, the court also upheld the same grounds of Colorado's policy replacing electors who attempt to cast a ballot for a person who did not win the state's popular vote. This is for people who was way out west, over like in Grand Junction, and they wanted to do their own thing. You have people in East Lyman who wanted to do their own thing, but you have the city and county of Denver who actually wanted to do exactly what it was, and that's why the case was actually brought up. So, any comments, Mike?
Is Mike there?
Okay, all right, go ahead, Nico.
Oh no, I think you cleared that one pretty good. I don't really have a lot to say on that. I just wanted to just also reiterate for anyone who might not follow along with how MOT broke some pieces down here. It's very important to speak on the fact that this law or this act was enacted once again primarily to put the onus not so much on Congress to make these decisions, but on the states. That's why the state ratification of the vote is very important. And you had what was called Safe Harbor Day that came about to say if there was any other issues or anything else that was going on with the states, that would be seen during that period. And if nothing came up during that period, then you basically ratify your certify your votes. And then, that primarily goes to Congress, which tends to be more, like MOT said before, almost more somewhat ceremonial to move forward to basically certify the election. Only under certain special cases can the Congress kind of come in and make some changes, and they're very narrow and very limited. So I just wanted to just make sure we're clear on that. MOT covered that. I talked about that a little earlier, but I want to make sure that we're clear on that so we understand the process here. All right, MOT, go ahead.
Yeah.
Go ahead, Mike.
Yeah, I was muted. Well, I thought I was talking. Yeah, I think MOT covered it pretty well, and understand who the demographic is that's always impacted by these decisions at the end of the day, if it's any consequence to anyone else.
Yes, and what Mike is really saying is the demographic that's impacted the most are Black people. Yep. We are impacted the most, and we're the ones whose vote that they're actually trying to eliminate to keep you from doing it, like in Bush v. Gore, where that went to the Supreme Court. No doubt about it, Gore did not fight hard enough. Had he done it, I believe he could have possibly overturned that decision, but he didn't. And Trump, who's trying to overturn something here, is nowhere in the ballpark of overturning anything that can be legitimated through this process. He's nowhere in the ballpark. Anyway,
MOT,
all right.
MOT, do you know if they were using paper ballots back then?
Yeah, they were using paper ballots and they were counted by hand.
All right.
Yeah, counted by hand. It's just that they controlled who came to actually vote back then, and that was the actual deal. When other people started showing up to vote during Reconstruction, that's when the two separate sets of electors started to go up. And as you've seen in the 1880 census, the amount of people who was in those areas, quote unquote, went down versus the people who was up, as well as the people who were registered to vote went way down versus the people who was already registered to vote before.
Yes, and that's very key, because when you talk about the end of Reconstruction, now that Reconstructive period was over, so your senators, your Black senators and Congress people were then removed from office, and your vote then became savagely suppressed, and they came in with all kind of now poll taxes and poll this and poll that, and
it's the rise of Jim Crow and all that kind of stuff. So yeah,
exactly. So they stopped basically you from exercising your franchise. And that lasted well into the next century, in fact. So until we came underneath the Voting Rights Act of 1965, where we really saw other very significant changes moving on. But anyway, go ahead.
All right, go on. You got to mute up because you got some scratching, or maybe the mic's too loud or something. All right, so now we have the election of the presidential election, where the actual president of the United States promised that there wasn't going to be a peaceful transfer of power, as he has actually delivered on. One of the many things that he delivered on. But after that, there became all the suing and all of the dog and pony show when it came to the actual counting of votes. They wanted to sue to stop people from being able to vote absentee. They wanted to stop to have votes counted by a certain type of day, period, and time. And all of these actual suits came into states. There was 4 states and pretty much 4 cities that they wanted to actually focus on. They were Madison, Wisconsin, Detroit, Michigan, Philadelphia, Pennsylvania, and Atlanta, Georgia. The reason why they wanted to attack these particular strongholds was because this is where the majority of the black vote was, in reference to the rest of the state, was actually held. So these people were trying all type of legal maneuvers to not count people's votes. And that's why they didn't consider the election legitimate, because they think that illegitimate people who was allowed to vote, which is black people, shouldn't have voted. And this is what they were trying to actually fight for and do. And you even had Republican people who were sat by the actual president who threw out some of these lawsuits with blistering letters along with them. You have to realize that when you file a lawsuit, it is your job and responsibility to come to court with all of the information in hand for you to be able to defend your case. If you're just putting up meaningless lawsuits to gain people's ignorance on the entire process, there should be an actual crime associated with that, because this was a deliberate plan to discredit the actual election itself and to fundraise off of the actual ignorance of the people. Now, the media could have told you how this stuff was going to go, but it has to come down to concerned citizens like ourselves, who are going to be the one to let you know how all this stuff actually works. Mike.
No, this is absolutely correct. Now I understand that process would actually lead you to believe that there was some form of irregularities in the process that made the votes illegitimate. But the reality is, a lot of particular voters, that being black, were purged from the rolls, and there was an attempt to further sanction those voters so that they could not vote in the first place on November 4th. And we have to understand this is only coming from one side, in particular those who have a lot more to win, a lot more to gain than to do to lose.
Yeah, that primarily came from the loser, from the loser side. They lost. They did not want to see you win, and they've always, well, let's be very clear, voter suppression of black votes has been the order of the day in this country. But certainly in this election, it was certainly tried again, and it wasn't as successful as it has been in the past, but it was definitely tried. Your vote did count. We did have somebody come on the other day saying your vote didn't count, talking absolute idiocy. But at the end of the day, your vote does count, and it's been very important. That's what they don't want you to exercise is your vote to change the balance of how things are going on in this country, the presidency, and so forth. And that is what Trump and these guys are even still trying to do right now through the Congress here, and trying to change the the outcome of this election by methods of trying to jimmy the Congress and the Senate here to overturn the Electoral College vote. Now, and it's primarily the disenfranchisement of people that what MOT just brought up, the cities of that were in Milwaukee, Wisconsin, in Detroit, Michigan, in Philadelphia, Pennsylvania, and of course in Atlanta, Georgia. They're looking. This is what they're primarily really trying to overturn, and that's where most of the challenges were really coming in. So yes, so it's your vote once again that they're trying to disenfranchise. So we have to be very clear on that. And I want to make sure people are not miffed on anything else. And that's what this whole voter scam and all this that these guys are trying to bring up that has no proof and has not been proven at all, where they're trying to say where most of this activity actually happened was in these areas, which is utterly ridiculous. But still, that's what we're currently dealing with. And I believe we will be dealing with this certainly in the future, because we're certainly dealing with that right now, currently in Atlanta, Georgia, where they are trying to suppress your vote. And I believe if the outcome comes out to where these two challengers win, there's going to be some more shenanigans going down there, because they've done all that they could right now to keep you from voting down there as well. And that's going post presidential election. Unbelievable, but going on.
All right. I mean, like most of these news stations were actually playing up the fact that there was a lot of voter fraud, and it had to come down to the point to where the actual electoral system of the voting started sending cease and desist letters to the actual news media to get them to stop disparaging the name of their actual company. And these companies subsequently went on station and started to print and say retractions from all of their other hosts from actually saying all the stuff that they were saying, that the voters were hacked and all that kind of stuff. And even after that, the host still came on the air, still repeating the same type of election fraud type material and information.
Well, to your point, MOT, what they do is they add an asterisk now to everything that they say and say, these claims cannot be substantiated or some way to, backdoor their way out of it while at the same time saying it. And so it's allowing, this sort of gray area to malign the institution of democracy, while at the same time playing that it's not really that bad. I'm just making a statement. You can't keep yelling fire inside of a theater and then say, well, it's just my opinion.
Well, what I find more interesting than anything else is those Dominion voting machines that they're saying are faulty or whatever, that has not been proven at all. They're still in action right now in Atlanta, and they're voting on them right now. Mm-hmm. And mighty funny, the Republican committee there in that state is telling people to go out and vote and get on those machines as well as people who are mailing in ballots, but go in and vote in those machines. And early voting has we've seen at the same levels that ultimately we were seeing in the general election. So the hypocrisy behind this is ridiculous. It's what I can say, and that just proves to you the scam behind this sham that they're trying to run, which is shameful. Anyway.
All right, so it's pretty much saying right here how the star witness was spouting a whole bunch of nonsense in these press conferences that made it look like it was actual court trials, was given a cease and desist letter from the Dominion voting system itself. Me personally, I think if you had any type of election fraud video, you should be able to come to YouTube and actually prove your claims. If not, you should lose your channel, because there's really no reason to be riding the hysteria of a process that you didn't know about. So
it's disinformation.
There.
Yeah, it's disinformation. In YouTube's guidelines as of this year, I think it was in March or something like that, they updated their guidelines and basically said any information that's being spread falsely accusing that's involving political banter and falsely accusing any candidate of not being able to serve because of some extraordinary reason that can't be proven, it's actually considered to be disinformation and against the policies and guidelines of YouTube as a whole. And so that sort of content should have been removed, and that content creator should have been dealt with by the powers to be within the private entity of YouTube.
Yeah, totally agreed. But yet, a lot of it went on for quite a bit. Now there seems to be locking a lot of that stuff down. But it was still pushed, and none of it was proven. That they could prove none of this. Even Giuliani, when he got in front of a federal court and tried to push a case, he didn't even talk about voter fraud. He understood that if he even brought up fraud and knew he was lying about or knew that was untrue, he could be heavily sanctioned and lose his law license and so forth behind that, with big fines and even the possibility, not saying that they would, but possibly of jail time. So therefore he didn't do that. And that's all I needed to know. That when they backed off from literally talking about fraud in front of the judge. And that was very key. So all of this was a disinformation campaign that Mike talks about, that MOT talks about, and others have spoken of. This was disinformation to shed doubt without any shred of proof, but to put out false information to question the system of which I believe they were actually able to do to a large extent, but I don't think they were entirely successful. But certainly from the legal perspective, all of their challenges failed.
Okay, all right. So for the next article is Louis Gohmert suit may force President Pence's hand in overturn of Trump's defeat. Again, this is the last stage of this, and then after we go over the next article, we're going to go over the actual process of what it is, because it's actual federal law, how the stuff actually gets counted. That was based on the actual electoral count of 1887. So in this article, Louis Gohmert of Texas and President Trump's defeated electors from Arizona may force Mike Pence to publicly pick a side in Trump's bid to overturn the 2020 election loss. Gohmert and a handful of would-be electors sued Mike Pence in federal court on Monday in a long-shot bid to throw out the rules that govern Congress counting of electoral votes next week. It is an effort they hope that would permit Pence, who is tasked with leading the January 6th session of the House and Senate, to simply ignore President-elect Biden's electors and count Trump's losing slates instead. So pretty much they was just going, well, their plan was to just ignore counting all of Biden's votes, but count all of Trump's votes. Like, I don't understand what that was supposed to be. And as again, we cited the law earlier, the 1887 law known as the Electoral Coll, the vague statute that's long governed the electoral vote counting process with minimal drama. Unconstitutionally binds Pence from exercising a total authority to choose which votes count. Now, under that, and especially with the Supreme Court law that I just cited, it's pretty much a ceremonial act. It doesn't need to go on, but you're going to see what happened today. As of today, this is the next article. Hold on a second. Let me bring up the next article. This article is fresh as today. That Mike Pence declined to back Gohmert-led effort to upend election, lawyers indicate. Lawyers for Representative Gohmert of Texas and Arizona's 11 Republican electors revealed Tuesday that Vice President Pence declined to sign onto their plan to upend Congress's certification of President-elect Joe Biden's victory. It is the first indication that Pence is resisting some of the most extreme calls to reverse the presidential election results. Thus relying on his role as the presiding officer on January 6th when the Congress meets to finalize Biden's win. So as of today, it looked like he's going to actually do his actual job as the president of the Senate in actual certifying the actual electoral vote count for President-elect Biden. And now we're going to go over as the final thing. Is there any comments?
Yes.
New comments?
Yeah. I have a quick comment here. The bottom line is, and as I read deeper into the act, if the vice president even says he can go against it, that can be once again challenged by the governors of the state, and they can overrule the vice president on this. The states, at the end of the day, have the ultimate power here. So if the governors once again vote to say, no, this is our vote, and we override the vice president on this, he can be overridden. So even the vice president does not have the ultimate say here. It is still left on the states. That is why they wrote this law like this and ratified this back and made it law, because they did not want the Congress or even the executive branch of government to have the ultimate say on what would be the outcome of the people's election. They were going to leave it on the people, and the governors of these states will ultimately determine how this will be determined. And I read that today as I went deeply over the laws. So this is exactly the kind of game that can be played. So these guys have actually no chance if the governors once again want to come back around again and deal with it. If this had to be pushed to that level, if say Pence decided he was going to try to overturn this, it would go back on the shoulders of the governors. So that's why they wrote this law. Those people back then understood kind of what they were dealing with and didn't want partisan events inside of the legislative branch and the executive branch to determine the final outcome of this. It would be determined by the people, and that would be done and determined by the governors that originally ratified or certified the election. It will go back to them.
Okay. All right. So let's, Mike, anything else before we go forward?
I think Nagone laid it out brilliantly. Go ahead.
All right. So this is the actual federal law right here that says what's going to go on. Wait, hold on. Let me make it bigger. Or go down on the 6th of the 6th of January. Can everybody see that, or do I need to make it bigger?
No, it's fine.
On the panel, can you see it?
Yeah, it's just clear. I can see it.
All
I
right.
can see it.
Okay. So this is why the 6th is important. Congress shall be in session on the 6th day of January, succeeding every meeting of the elections. The Senate and the House of Representatives shall meet with the House of Representatives at the hour of 1 o'clock in the afternoon on that day. The President of the Senate, that will be Mike Pence, shall be their presiding officer. 2 tellers shall be previously appointed on the part of the Senate, and the 2 on the part of the House of Representatives, to whom shall be handed, as they are opened by the President of the Senate, Mike Pence, all the certificates and papers purporting to be certificates of the electoral votes, which certificates and papers shall be opened, presented, and acted upon in alphabetical order of states, beginning with the letter A. And said tellers, having read the same in President's hearing of the 2 houses, shall make a list of the votes as they appear from said certificates, and the votes having been ascertained and counted according to the rules in this subchapter provided. The results of the same shall be delivered to the President of the Senate, who shall thereupon announce the state of the vote, which will now shall deem a sufficient declaration of persons in the elected President and Vice President of the United States. That's the process. Process that has not changed since 1887. Something that didn't need to be challenged, that probably should have been challenged in the year 2000. We had a ton of court cases as soon as the election was over because they wanted to stop counting the votes at midnight. So the foresight of the people who came up with the 1887 Electoral Count was there to stop Congress from grandstanding and actually trying to overturn things that are not there. A lot of these people have raised a ton of money gaming the actual political ignorance of the American people. And they use this money to actually pay for media advertising, which is why the media doesn't really inform people on the actual process itself. There's really no need for all of this stuff to go on. We have a president-elect. Nobody was complaining about this system to this type of a head the last time, or in 2016, or 2008, or 2012. But at the end of the day, we got people who just don't want to follow the process while simultaneously wanting to actually overturn actual elections of actual millions of people. And this stuff shouldn't even be going on. So as we close up, you got any closing thoughts, Nagon?
Okay, excellent breakdown there, MOT. Excellent breakdown. The bottom line behind that, that's exactly what these guys are trying to do, because what they're trying to do is they're trying to take advantage of a act or so forth that still has some nebulousness about it. Things are not as set as they might think, because some of the questions that came about with this act later on down the line was, well, Congress, if they determined in a plenary session, which is a overall, kind of heavy session in Congress where they could sit down and make a determination on changing an act, that a very simple vote of majority rule could potentially overturn some of this act, because Congress has the ability to change laws. So they're thinking that that's something that Congress would have to be, that Congress could do. Now, could Congress turn around and make a determination that they wanted to change this law and then turn this whole thing around? It's possible. Would they be able to do this now? Highly improbable to tie this whole thing up like this, but these were some of the questions that people had, or some of the commenters had on this law later on down the line. So still, people feel that this could potentially be challenged down the line here. But overall, as the law is written and how the act is set up, you have procedures and definitive stipulations that are in place right now that are highly unlikely that anyone's going to go against. And what Pence did and what he signaled, he's not going to go against that and try to upset the whole apple cart on this. What I'm disturbed more about is the president himself calling out his savages to show up and to be unruly and to cause chaos on the scene of that day, of which I am actually thinking he is calling for somewhat of unrest and some level of an insurrection against the government. That's how I'm looking at this, and I feel that this is something that the media, in my view, has not stepped on and has not called out even more, which I find a bit disturbing. That the president has actually called for his savages, and we know who they are, to come out and to make
nothing to do.
Say that again. Say that again, MOT.
We got to move on.
Okay,
move on. Mike, any last word before we go?
Yeah, I was just going to mention that, and I dropped a link in the actual chat as well, that this is all about disinformation or mistrust of the system, the political system. And so to have Mike Pence and to sue him for something like this is actually very dangerous, because it sets a precedence going forward that if you're dissatisfied with the results of the political process, that you can usurp it by making attempts to sue the president of the Senate or the head of the Senate and other members of bodies just to get the result that you want. And we can't have that in the American political system, because it's supposed to be a democracy.
So you call that a legal coup? They're trying to pull a legal coup d'etat. Is that correct?
Sounds like it's
correct.
Yeah.
Yeah, and this stuff has precedent that people was not allowed to come back to Congress after they did this after the Civil War. They were sent home.
Yeah.
They were sent home. So, like, this is what I'm saying. Like, the party of law and order don't even want to live up to their actual means when it comes time for them to actually give up or even cede power. And, that's all we got on that. So I want to thank you guys for coming through. I'm the man tomorrow. This right here is about the Electoral Count of 1887. The reason why it's important, we gave the actual where this stuff actually came from with the two different state of electors that came through in 1876 that started the actual argument, and with the close elections of 1880 and 1884, with similar things happening, not really coming up to the actual grounds of stopping Reconstruction, mind you. But this is what this is about. Being able to vote in this country should be as easy as getting locked up. I don't understand how they do not have this thing down to where we still got to worry about people being purged from voter rolls and all these type of things. So I want to thank everybody for coming through. I'm the man tomorrow. Like, share, comment, and subscribe, and you guys have a really nice day.